Here I was, an Angeles City drug addict. Well, I was taking prescription meds for sleeping at the time. But, on top of that, there I was. Angeles City, what else can you do? I was drinking beer every single day, basically, to just kill boredom. But essentially, I was stuck in Angeles City. And it's more psychological than anything else. I wasn't physically stuck there, but it's like I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted to do next. I had no sense of direction. I had very little to zero motivation. I was just comfortable enough in Angeles to stay there. So anyway, there I was, sitting on the sidewalk there, just thinking to myself, like, what are you gonna do next, big boy? Like, God, the big man upstairs, please give me a sign. And there it was, like a flash in the pan. It was a text message from the Great One. And no, I'm not talking about Wayne Gretzky. I haven't talked to him in years. Oh, wait, no, I've never talked to him. It was the other Great One. The greatest man in Cebu. His nickname is the Great D. Mr. Scooter Rental himself, Mr. Derek from Q Adventures. The guy messages me. He messages me and asks, why I'm not traveling anymore. I told him that, hey, I'm broke, I'm addicted to drugs, I'm an alcoholic, and I really have nothing better to do. So Derek, the guy, he takes it upon himself to get me off the drug habit and back on the saddle. Derek offered me a bike. All he wanted is I vlog my travels, and he wants me to get off the sleeping pills, okay? So I told myself, this is a sign from the big man up above. The big man sent me a sign. He wants me to hop back on the scoot. So there I was. I had like 2 weeks left in my apartment in Angeles City, but I booked a flight from Angeles City to Cebu. And the next thing I knew, I was at Derek's house, hopping on this white Honda PCX. I've never driven one before. So I want to talk about the money situation here, guys. Let's talk about the money situation. Like, if you plan to come to Cebu to rent a bike, you might need some tour advice, like a itinerary, right? So we're going to talk about that in the coming video. In this video, we're going to sort of talk about some other stuff. Like, what I want to talk about in the next video is what I did and what I would have done in hindsight, my mistakes and all this kind of stuff. So basically, you can learn from my mistakes. But there was more than meets the eye. Anyway, we'll talk about that on the next video. But I want to talk about the money situation and Q Adventures. So Q Adventures is the name of, the scooter rental company if you ever come to Cebu. It's owned by Derek and the beautiful I, who is almost his wife. And there's a certain situation happening right now. So let me just tell you about this certain situation, okay? Hold on to your horses here, guys. Listen carefully. Right now, up to April 30th, you can pre-book, okay? So you can pre-book with Derek anytime between now and April 30th. So over the next 6 weeks, you can contact Derek, and usually like a monthly, for example, the Honda PCX that I had, usually it's 20,000 pesos. But if you pre-book like before April 30th, it's only going to be 15,000 pesos, or I think a little less than that. So you just need to book before April 30th, and then you can tell him you want the bike anytime before that or after that, okay? So when you're actually picking up the bike is not important. You just have to book it April 30th, tell him when you want it. So if you contact Derek today or before April 30th, you can tell him you'll be in Cebu in December this year or even December 2030. Anytime, it doesn't matter. You can pick up the bike from Derek anytime, and it'll be the discounted price. You just have to pre-book it before April 30th, okay? So that's that. Now let's talk about why you should work with Derek. And this is not a Derek promotione. This is just me talking about Derek. Now, Derek Derek had one renter, okay? Now this is the kind of guy Derek is. Now Derek had a renter, and this renter booked for a month. So this renter, he's in Dumaguete, and he decided to extend his rental for another month. But Derek, he had already rented that bike, that Dumaguete bike, to another person there in Cebu. He was going to pick it up in Cebu. So this is a little bit of a conundrum for Derek, right? So what Derek did was he and his wife, they rode down to Dumaguete to pick up this bike, and they gave the Dumaguete renter another bike. So what I'm trying to say here is, like, if you rent from Derek, if there's any kind of problem, Derek and they're going to solve it for you. So let me tell you about problem number 2 here. Now, let me tell you this story, okay? So there was a renter who it's kind of weird, he had a fake Philippine driver's license. So he was pulled over in Lapu-Lapu only about 10 minutes after renting this bike. So obviously, the police noticed this fake license. So what does he do? I mean, he calls up Derek. I mean, Derek is nearby, and it's Derek's bike. And he and they rode out to the location. It's only 10 minutes away. And supposedly, I mean, if there was no Derek, the bike would have been impounded, and the guy, the renter himself, would have faced legal problems, because riding with a fake license is like riding with no license at all. It's illegal, with a fine and or prison time, right? So anyway, luckily, almost her entire family works for the Lapu-Lapu Police Department, okay? So she's well connected there in Lapu-Lapu if there's any problem. She was able to resolve the situation hassle-free with a couple phone calls. The renter didn't have to do anything. He got off with no problems. So the end result was this renter, this guy who rented with the fake license, nothing happened to him, okay? So what he did after that was he went the correct way of getting the Philippine driver's license. He took the driving course, written exam and everything. He did it the long way. It only took about a month. And after that, he rented from Derek again. I mean, Derek was there for him. Anyway, this is what you get with Q Adventures. So Derek and I know what they're doing. So you just rent from Derek and you got no problems. Now, you rent from someone else, it might be a little bit cheaper. I mean, instead of 15,000, it might be 12,000, but you don't know, you're going to be 100 miles away and the brakes fail, because when you don't charge much money, you can't run the business properly. You can't hire people to maintain the bikes, whereas Derek's business partner is a mechanic. So he's always maintaining the bikes. Anyway, the biggest bonus when renting from Derek is that, look, he has no restrictions on where you can ride. Like, this is very common in the Philippines, okay? Like, they don't want you to go very far when you rent a bike. I remember being in Dumaguete, and I said, how far can I go? I mean, I couldn't even go around the island of Negros. I had to stay in Negros Oriental. The reason for that is, like, if the bike has any problems and you bail, now the rental company is responsible for this bike. They have to travel the 100 miles to pick up this bike, so they don't want you to go very far. But really, what does that do? It limits the renter to just basically the surrounding area. Well, a lot of foreigners like myself, like, we want to ride island to island. We don't want restrictions, and I'm assuming you're like me. You don't want any restrictions on where you go for the month that you have the bike, if you rent it for a month. Like with Derek, you can ride from the very southern tip of the Philippines to the very northern tip, or at least, you're free to do so if you choose. Now, I want to talk about the pros and cons of renting. Now, if you buy a bike, you're going to live here, you're best to get a Philippine driver's license, which is really no problem. You just have to go to the LTO, or, the Philippines DMV, and you just, show them your American license, and they give you a Philippine license. So it's just a matter of taking your time and sitting in the lineups and all that stuff. But it's possible to do. And if you buy, you also need to wait for the registration to be available, what they call the ORCR. So in your country, the registration, it's basically same day. And in the Philippines, it's 2 months. So your bike is sitting there for 2 months. If you buy brand new, you can drive it locally. You just got to be careful not to, get stopped by the police or anything. But if long-term is the name of the game, then buying a bike outright is really the way to go. In my opinion, you want to buy brand new, because you don't know if you buy it used, you don't know if the guy's had it for a year and he's never changed the oil. Like, you just don't know this. So in my opinion, spend the extra $1,000 and get a brand new bike. Now, anyway, let's talk about another situation here. Like, you're in the Philippines for just 3 to 6 months. So it's basically long-term, pretty long-term. In that case, you'd be okay to buy a used bike, okay? It'd be better to buy a used bike than to rent. Now, the registration is ready to go. you can just buy a used bike and drive it same day legally. And it depends, what kind of bike, but it might be 1,000 USD, 50,000 pesos if you're going to buy a used 125cc. So yeah, 3 to 6 months, it would be cheaper just to buy a used bike. Now, if you're in the Philippines for 1 or 2 months, you'd be best not to deal with the hassles of buying, and it'd be better just to rent month to month. So I just wanted to thank Derek for his help. Okay, we are bros for life. And on the next video, we'll talk about my trip in case you wanted to replicate it. We'll talk about like my mistakes and what I would have done in hindsight. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of touring the Philippines as someone who's done it. That vid will come out as soon as it's done because sometimes the video takes a day to make and sometimes it takes longer. But just to let you know, in April, I'm planning on settling down in Cebu and I'll start doing stories full time, okay? So thank you for putting up with those travel vids. I do appreciate all the love that came from it. And I appreciate all the complaints I got from it too, okay? I do understand. I got my own way of thinking and other people got their way of thinking. So it's a kind of a clash there. But the videos were what they were. The travel videos are done now. And until the next video, my good friends, I will see you very soon.